Thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you, wherever you are around the world, or early evening particularly. It's a real honor to be part of this conference, this virtual conference. My keynote is titled The Year of Strategic Distinction. What's your employee and leadership distinction? So a little bit about me, and these are my social media handles. Handles, please do. Let's connect. Insta, Twitter. They call it X now, but I'm still going to call it Twitter because I think it's still Twitter. Feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel and also, of course, LinkedIn. And anything you hear today that is relevant, please take a screenshot and at me and at the LinkedIn and Instagram page. And feel free to take some picture screenshots or a text as well. So listen, and then my email's there as well. A little bit about myself. So my name is Onyi Anyado. I'm a global leadership speaker, corporate trainer, and futurist. So let's go back to the beginning. In the beginning, so I was born and raised in Hackney, East London. Obviously, London being the capital of England. To a 2.4 family, my United Kingdom. My mum, my dad, my sister, and myself. Unfortunately, at a very early age, my dad left. So for the majority of my childhood years and my teenage years, it was just me, my mum, and my sister. Thankfully, fortunately, after 25 years, me and my dad reunited about 11 years ago, 12 years ago now. Yeah, on Father's Day. So you can imagine myself growing up in a single parent family. It was just me, my mum, and my sister. I used to always say that, oh my gosh, that growing up we were poor, but it wasn't actually poor. My mum was a hard worker and she looked after us as the best she could do. So coming from a Nigerian background, I get to be a doctor or lawyer or pharmacist, a typical African strong Nigerian parent wish for their child. So I went to a good secondary school. I went to college. I studied business studies. I think I got a merit. And then I got to university. Again, I didn't know what I want to become, but I was just going with the flow. And I studied management and marketing, which was really good. And I love university because, growing up in Hackney, the majority of my friends were black, Afro-Caribbean. In America, they call it African American, but in this case, we call it black African Caribbean, Afro-Caribbean. And so when I got to university, I had white friends, Chinese friends, Italian friends, and it was a real coming of age. Unfortunately, when I got to the second year of university, I dropped out and began living a particular life called the street life. Now, it wasn't really gangs, but it was just young men on the streets of East London up to no good. Unfortunately, in that 10-year period, six of my friends got murdered. I went to prison twice and I nearly got shot dead. So you can imagine the life I led, a couple times in prison, six of my friends getting murdered, and me nearly getting shot dead. Funny enough, April 21st was my birthday. And I always remember that three of my friends on two different occasions got shot dead. So it's just interesting. I still celebrate my birthday, of course. I mean, obviously, I'm not in that life anymore. So now, fast forward 2025, which I call the year of strategic distinction. We're in very interesting times. 2020 wasn't just the start of a new decade. Of course, it was obviously the start of a new form of disruption. We had the lockdown, the Ukraine-Russian war, downtime, financial, etc., etc. But out of every form of disruption can come a new order of leadership. So definitely, there's been disruptions in the workplace. There's been whether it's hybrid working. There's been disruptions in organization across the board. There's been many job losses, and many job losses have been predicted by the World Economic Forum. But out of every disorder can come a new order of leadership. So the essence of my talk is how now you can become a yardstick 21st century employee of distinction. How can you now develop your leadership skills, your leadership development as an employee? So again, feel free to screenshot at Lit Careers and at me on Instagram and LinkedIn, etc. So who is the yardstick 21st century employee? In 2015, I said the following. An employee is a leader of excellence, trailblazer, and pioneer who constantly brings change to their organization. An employee is a leader of excellence, trailblazer, and pioneer who constantly brings change to their organization. So, an employee is not a leader of mediocrity, is not a follower of excellence, but rather as a leader of excellence, trailblazer, and pioneer. And the key word, or one of the key words, is constantly brings change. The key word is constantly brings change to their organization. So before, I mean, there was as you know, for the American people on a conference, there was a singer songwriter Doris Day, and she once sang, "Que sera sera, whatever will be. The future's not ours to see." And that "Que sera sera" is that kind of attitude of, well, wake up in the morning, rush to work, sit in front of a computer, and then after 25 years, retire with a golden handshake. Times have changed, times are changing, and times are going to continue to change. Particularly, I call it the speed of change. So, an employee is a leader of excellence, trailblazer, and pioneer who constantly brings change to their organization. So, let's now break it down into how you can now, what's your leadership and employee distinction. So, the first pillar of the Yardstick 21st Century Leader is in 2015, I said the following: distinction in leadership isn't about me, myself, and I. Distinction in leadership is about him, her, and us. Distinction in leadership isn't about me, myself, and I. Distinction in leadership is about him, her, and us. So distinction in leadership isn't about me, myself, and I. Gimme, gimme, gimme. My name is Jimmy. Hopefully, there's no Jimmys in a conference. But actually, it's about him, her, and us. Unfortunately, particularly in the West, including myself in the UK, the West were very self-centered. We're very selfish. It's my job, my career, it's my attitude, it's my promotion, it's my position, it's me, 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 me. The new order, the new yardstick, 21st century employee leader of distinction is not about me, myself, and us. Me, myself, and I, sorry, is about him, her, and us. So the essence of the yardstick 21st century employee leader has to be legacy minded. So you have to be a legacy minded. When we say that, when famous people die, we said, oh, he left a legacy or she left a legacy. Actually, you don't have to be dead to leave a legacy. And I love words. I mean, the English language, this particular English language we speak is only 500 years old. So I like to break down words. So the essence of him, her, and us is about being community. So it's being legacy minded, but also as being community minded. And when you break down the word communities, common unity, community. So common unity, common unity. And that is the essence of the culture of the organization. I've worked with various organizations, delivering workshops and talks, etc., and coaching for senior management teams. And you'd be surprised how many are very self centered, how many don't really understand the culture of the organization, or the organization is very self centered. There's no unity, there's no community, and there's no common unity. So distinction in leadership isn't about me, myself, and I. Distinction in leadership is about him, her, and us. It's that essence of being legacy minded, that essence of being community minded. You know, Unfortunately, whether we like it or not, there's no such thing as job satisfaction. But, and with, as the United and the World Economic Forum said, by 2030, millions of jobs are going to be lost. But also, there's going to be new jobs are going to be formed as well. So you now, as an, if I was to ask you how many are going to be working and still going to be working in the next 10 years, I would guess that the majority of us would be working in some form of employment for the next maybe 10, 12 years. So definitely there's always going to be that opportunity, whether you like it or not, to, skip roles or go to another role. So part of your CV or distinction on your CV is that you're known to be legacy minded, you're known to be community minded, common unity, common unity. So it's not about me, myself, and I. It's about him, her, and us. Pillar number two: leadership isn't about age, but rather leadership is about influence, leadership is about impact, and leadership is about inspiration. So leadership isn't about age, but rather leadership is about influence, leadership is about impact, and leadership is about inspiration. So it's not how old you are or how young you are or how long you've been working in your organization or your industry, but rather leadership isn't about age, it's about influence, impact, and inspiration. And guess what? Before you can positively, of course, influence, impact, and inspire your team, your department, your organization, social media, the world, because we now with social media, we're living in a global village. The first person you have to strategically and intentionally influence, impact, and inspire is yourself. So remember, we have to be legacy minded. We have to be community minded as well. But we also, that means that we also have to constantly and intentionally influence, impact, and inspire ourselves. I've worked with various clients across the board, and it's interesting. There's no distinction between, say, a client in, or an employee in, California or in Chelsea, which is in England, London. Some 9 times out of 10, it's usually wake up in the morning, have a quick breakfast, listen to the news, which is negative, or read the local newspaper or the daily news, which is negative. So by the time you get to the office, guess what? All you've heard, all you've embraced and influenced and that's infused you is negativity. So I always challenge and work with my clients to, on your way to work, rather than just listening to the news or not listening to the news. I'm not saying you shouldn't listen to the news, but how about listening to a podcast? How about you listen to some relaxing music? So by the time you get into the workplace, your mind and your body is ready for the day. So leadership isn't about age, but rather leadership is about influence, impact, and inspiration. So it's not about before you can influence, impact, and inspire your team, your organization, department, etc., the world, social media. The first person you have to influence, impact, and inspire is yourself. And as we know, to get to any level of distinction, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be extremely hard. But that's what distinguishes the leaders. We see the obstacles and the problems, and we rather see opportunities and possibilities. So the next pillar, distinction in leadership, excuse me, isn't a mindset. Distinction in leadership is a state of mind. Distinction in leadership isn't a mindset. Distinction in leadership is a state of mind. So, the question is, what's your career, what's your employee and leadership distinction? So, the difference between a mindset and a state of mind is the following. A mindset is, well, for the next 10 years, I'm going to be working, nothing wrong with that, but I'm going to be in one job, one position, I'm not going to learn anything new. Those times are changing, particularly now with the birth of AI, with the global job disruptions that are happening and going to unfortunately going to happen at exponential rate. We now have to go from a state of mind to a mind, sorry, from a mindset to a state of mind. And a mindset is really what it is. It's a fixed mindset. You're not learning anything new, or you refuse anything new. You refuse to be, connect with new people. It's just the same case, sarah, whatever will be. But a state of mind actually is being an agile thinker, it's being a disruptive thinker, and it's being a future thinker. So having a state of mind is having a state of mind is being an agile thinker. We're speaking about that shortly. It's being a disruptive thinker, and it's being a future thinker. Why? The future you're not thinking about has already started. When I speak around the world, when I have different clients, etc., and I tell them, look, massive job losses are coming. 70% are already scared, and that's our human nature. But after the fear goes away, you now have to strategize. You now have to be specific and strategic and think, okay, how can I now go from a mindset to a state of mind? Because the world is changing at an alarming rate. We're seeing how AI is growing at an exponential rate, and we haven't seen anything yet. So having a state of mind means that you, as an employee leader, well, your distinction is that you're a future thinker, you're an agile thinker, and you're a disruptive thinker. And when I'm saying about a disruptive thinker, sometimes we have to disrupt our own status quo because we're so used to the comfort zone that anything new seems like a big challenge or anything new seems out of place. But sometimes to go from a mindset to a state of mind, we have to change our own state of quo, status quo, our own state of mind, and admit that, okay, these are my weak points. These are not where I'm not strong at. How can I now improve it? And that could be through coaching, attending conferences like this, and being asking the questions. I don't listen to rap music anymore, but Tupac said it best. Even a genius asks his questions. So as a genius, you now have to ask yourself, okay, what's my mindset? What is some of the limitations that I go through on a daily or weekly or monthly basis? And now how can I get out of that mindset into a state of mind? And again, I didn't mention it, I'll mention it quickly now. I'm offering some fantastic deals, I speak about at the end anyway, in regards to my coaching program. So distinction in leadership isn't a mindset. Distinction in leadership is a state of mind. So that was the three pillars. Leadership isn't about me, myself, and I. Distinction in leadership is about him, her, and us. And that's to be community minded and legacy minded. Distinction in leadership isn't about age, but rather it's about influence, impact, and inspiration. And before we can influence, impact, and inspire our world, our office, our department, we have to influence, impact, and inspire ourselves. And of course, distinction in leadership isn't a mindset. Excuse me, distinction in leadership is a state of mind. So, as a leader, now with the future coming at us at alarming rate, I mean, we're now in 2025. I have to think what year we're in. We're now in 2025, and before we know it's Happy New Year 2026, and then a new decade 2030 is coming to approach us. So, as an employee leader of distinction, it's important that you operate and you understand the three levels of sight. That's what's ultimately going to distinguish you. So, what are the three levels of sight? Number one, hindsight. Number two, foresight. And number three, farsight. So the three levels of sight every leader needs in the 2020s and beyond. Remember, the majority of us are still going to be working in one capacity or the other in the next 10, 12 years. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love to retire and go, where would I like to go to Bahamas or something like that? Feel free to put in a chat, where would you like to retire to? So as a leader, you need three levels of sight: hindsight, foresight, and farsight. And when I'm talking about hindsight, I'm talking about, a very good film from the 80s, late 90s was Back to the Future. When we face obstacles as leaders, nine times out of 10, an initial instinct is to panic. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. But sometimes we know how to go back to the future and realize, okay, I faced obstacles before, I faced challenges before. How did I achieve it? How did I come over them obstacles? So hindsight. Also, celebrate your previous mistakes, celebrate your previous successes, and understand your previous mistakes. They say that, when you're driving, if you're always looking behind, you're going to end up crashing. But I've noticed that, speaking and working with clients around the world, is that we take our past successes or our past failures for granted. But that ultimately has shaped us or is shaping us for the leader that where we're going. So always think about your past successes, your past failures, quote unquote, and use that as a form of inspiration and a form of direction for now and the future. So hindsight. Foresight really is for now. Okay, what's my goals for the next 3 to 5 years, or even less than that? What's happening in my industry? What are the shifts in my industry? How can I now pivot? What are the new learnings in my industry? What can I do to better myself as a leader, as an employee in the organization, for my staff as well? Because some of you, of course, have staff, but also in my personal life too. Because whether we like it or not, and I'm not saying, you know, panic or be too, unsettled. But whether we like it or not, the future you're not thinking about has already started. So for you now, for the next 3 to 5 years, you have to be honest with yourself and ask, okay, what are the future jobs in my industry? What are the future trends in my industry? What are the future shifts in my industry? And when I'm talking about the future, I'm talking about now. And how can I now pivot towards them? Remember, the state of mind of an entrepreneur, of a leader, sorry, is actually being a future thinker. So I'm not saying that you have to predict what's going to happen in the next 50, 60, 70 years. I'm not saying that. But I am saying that you have to have the ability and understanding to say, okay, the next 3 to 5 years, this is where I see myself, and this is how I can get there by taking baby steps or sometimes taking giant steps. So hindsight, foresight, and definitely without any shadow of a doubt, farsight. And when I'm talking about far side, the World Economic Forum have already said by 2030, something like between 80 and 90 million jobs worldwide are gonna be gone. That's the far side thinking. And then the ripple effect is obviously gonna happen in the next 10, 15 years. So what about that generation that's leaving high school, university, etc.? What's the job market gonna be for them? So far sight is so important. And I know some people always say to me, but only you can't predict the future. And I'm not talking about predicting the future. What I am saying is that, and I'll give an example. Here in the UK, in America, they have a mortgage system, a 25-year mortgage system. John Smith meets Sally Davis, they get married and become Mr. and Mrs. Smith, they get a mortgage. How do they know they're going to be working in 18 years' time to pay off that mortgage? They've seen something, they've believed something, and now they're taking baby steps to achieve that something. And it's the same thing with Farsight. Where do you see yourself in the next 10, 15 years? If you see yourself retired or you see yourself still working, you have to take baby steps. And there's so much information. In fact, there's too much information out there for us not to have knowledge. So hindsight, foresight, and farsight. So more than ever before, we have to be agile. And I know everyone understands the term agile, but in about 3 years ago, I came up with this concept. Agile means accelerate gradually, incorporate leadership excellence. Accelerate gradually and incorporate leadership excellence. And that's a bit of an oxymoron because if you're accelerating, that's going fast. But if I'm saying accelerate gradually, that means the speed of thought. Your speed of thought has to be quicker in regards to making decisions, but then also you have to take calculated steps to achieve the decisions. And once you do that, you now incorporate the leadership excellence, which is the culture of your organization. Remember, the culture of your organization really in 2025 should be community, community, community. Unfortunately, I've met many leaders, senior managers who repel their staff and employees because they have such a bad attitude or a high esteem of themselves that they're now, they have a closed door policy that don't come to my office unless you send 2 emails. Don't come and speak to me unless you send 3 messages. Do you understand? So when you accelerate gradually, that's the speed of thought. You now are strategic with achieving your specific goals. Then you then incorporate the leadership excellence, which is the brand, which is the culture of the organization. And once you do that, that is you being an agile leader. Remember, the mindset to a state of mind is being a disruptive, a future thinker, and an agile thinker. So agile really is accelerate gradually and it incorporate leadership excellence. And we've established that leadership isn't about age, but rather is about influence, impact, and inspiration. So how can you become more agile? Remember, it's not que sera, sera, whatever be will be. What was relevant 7 years in the workplace 7 years ago is not relevant now. COVID-19 shifted everything. 2020, as I mentioned, was also a shift into a new era of disruption. So when I spoke about your leadership excellence, that was actually your brand. So, dear leader, your brand is what will distinguish you. No brand, no distinction. Your brand is what will distinguish you. No brand, no distinction. And when I'm talking about your brand on an organizational level, I'm talking about I created the three V's of your organizational brand: vision, your values, and your voice. But ultimately, as an individual now, social media has given everyone an equal platform. What's your voice saying? What are you passionate about? Is it women in tech? Is it minorities? Is it leadership development? You're either going to be a noise or you're going to be a voice. Social media has leveled the playing field. So you're either going to be a voice, you're saying something specific, and it's not about having 100 million followers. I'm not saying that, but actually, or you're going to be a noise. And now, none of us can afford to be a noise. So your brand is what will distinguish you. No brand, no distinction. And your organizational brand and also your personal brand is what I said to create the three V's: your vision, your values, and your voice. So when you're in your organization or when you have your staff, always be reminded and always remind them the vision, the values, and the voice of the organization. And you as an individual, as a leader, as an employee, what's your brand distinction in a very, very packed industry? Your industry, social media, everyone's got a voice now. TikTok, people are becoming overnight sensations. LinkedIn, people are becoming influencers. Instagram, people are getting followers left, right, and center. And I'm not saying that should be your yardstick, but at the same time, people that never had a voice before are now speaking about what they believe in and what they are passionate about. So your brand is what will distinguish you. No brand, no distinction. An example for me, a practical example. When I first entered the industry and all those years ago, I promised myself two things. One, I would never call myself a motivational speaker. Nothing wrong with that. But at the time, there were so many motivational speakers saying the same thing. And two, I will never quote anyone, but rather I will constantly be quoted. And of course, I don't use Chat GPT for my presentations. There's nothing wrong with that. But if I'm speaking about cutting edge distinction, which is my message, I knew I had to create a brand of distinction. So if I'm telling people how to stand out, I have to make sure I stand out myself. So, dear leader, your brand is what will distinguish you. No brand, no distinction. So, think about your vision, your values, and your voice, which is the culture of your organization, and how you can make it legacy minded an open door policy, and also it's also community, common unity. And of course, for your personal brand, it's your vision, your values, your voice. What are you saying on social media? What is your brand saying on social media? How do you, and you might be listening and say, well, I don't want to be known on social media. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But for those that do want to be known and believe they have something they want to say and they're passionate about an ideology, a concept, an idea, the world is yours. The world is yours. Literally, social media has equaled the playing field. So your brand is what will distinguish you. No brand, no distinction. So I'll talk about the three C's of disruptive leadership. The three C's of disruptive leadership: critical thinking, collaborative thinking, and creative thinking. Critical thinking, collaborative thinking, and creative thinking. It's so important. I mean, if you look at the WEF skills of the future 2025, which have already started anyway, because they told us like 7 years ago anyway, isn't it interesting that 75% of the skills of the future is all about thinking? It's fascinating. So remember what I said, that distinction in leadership isn't a mindset. Distinction in leadership is actually a state of mind. And your state of mind will now be determined on how much of a critical thinker, collaborative thinker, and a creative thinker you are. So as we know, critical thinking is that ability to see a problem and essentially achieve it quicker and easier than anyone else. We know now with ChatGPT and we know now with AI bots, and I'm going to speak about AI shortly, how the shift has happened. That now, are you really needed? Are you really needed? Well, I'm definitely needed. I'm sure you are too. Are we really needed in the scheme of things? Remember, unless you're going to retire from work next year or in the next 2 to 3 years, there's going to be massive shifts. So we now, as leaders, have to become even more cutting edge, even more critical thinkers, because if AI is now becoming more quote unquote conscious and a quick thinker in regards to solutions, well, if the WEF are saying that, look, 80 million plus jobs are going to be lost in the next 5, 7 years, that's saying something. And I'm not fear mongering. I'm just saying on the other side, let's now look for opportunities and possibilities in the midst of obstacles and problems. It's collaborative thinking. So important. There's a proverb that says, iron sharpen iron. And I always say, who has your ears will determine who I become. So collaborative thinking, if an individual, all they listen to every day in the morning and the evening is news, which is negativity. Guess what? They're rubbing their minds with like-minded person or individual. But being a collaborative thinker is listening to as many podcasts as possible, reading articles, really refreshing your mind. So I call it the three F's. Your mind, your thinking is fertile, it's fresh, and it's forward thinking. So when you collaborate and you come to conferences like this, you listen to relevant podcasts in your industry and outside of your industry, you do different kind of learning, formal learning and informal learning. And for some, you now become a teacher of your chosen subject. Guess what? You're now in that zone of collaborative thinking. And when you're in a zone of collaborative thinking, you become more fresh, you become more fertile, and you actually become a future thinker because you're not just seeing obstacles and problems, you're seeing opportunities and possibilities. So critical thinking, collaborative thinking, and creative thinking. Creative thinking in 2020, 2018, I said the following: your creativity will come from your observation, your desperation, or your acceleration. Your creativity, your creative disruption will come from your observation, what you see, your desperation, how you want to get to the next level, and your acceleration, the speed of change. And I give an example. So when I started up in the personal development industry, I started off in schools, colleges, and universities. But in 2018, I had a revelation that a shift was coming. Of course, I didn't know it was COVID-19. So with that, I shifted my business model to add more value in the corporate world and of course on the global playing field. And the rest is history now. But if I didn't have that understanding that a shift was coming, and think outside of the box, which was really acceleration, I wouldn't be here now. So your creativity, your creative distinction, your disruption, your value-driven distinction will come from your observation, your desperation, or and your acceleration. And your observation, as I mentioned before, is identifying the trends in your industry, the trends in your job market, the trends in your organization. What are the future trends that have already started? And how can I now pivot and actually become a value driven employee? Because remember now, competition is starting up whether you like it or not. So that's creative thinking. It comes from your acceleration, as I mentioned, the speed of change. Things are happening at an alarming rate. Like, as I said, we're in April now. Before we know it, it's May. Summer's gone, and it's going to be the fall, and it's Happy New Year 2026. So that comes from acceleration, the speed of change. And of course, it comes from desperation. When we hear desperation, we might think, oh my gosh, that's a negative word. But desperation is not so much about que sera, sera, but I want to become more strategic and I want to become more influential in that sense. So critical thinking, collaborative thinking, and creative thinking. And before I round up, in this era of creative distinction, it's now human, natural intelligence versus AI, artificial intelligence, to see who can create disruptive value at speed. So there's no time to be lazy, lethargic, and lackluster, but rather it's time to be deliberate, it's time to be distinctive, and it's time to be disruptive. In this era of creative distinction, is now human, natural intelligence versus AI, artificial intelligence, to see who can create disruptive value at speed. So there's no time to be lazy, lethargic, and lackluster, but rather it's time to be deliberate, it's time to be distinctive, and it's time to be disruptive. So how can you become more deliberate? As I mentioned before, it's being strategic, it's being intentional with adding value where you are. It's being deliberate to build a brand, a capacity, build your brand capacity. So when you're ready for the next level, you're not caught unawares. It's being distinctive. It's about, as I mentioned, it's actually about creative value online, offline in your organization. It's valuing yourself more than ever before. Because in a busy industry, in a busy office, in a busy organization, you now have to have that ability to stand out and say and deliver what no one else is saying and deliver. And of course, you have to be disruptive. You have to be disruptive because whether we like it or not, whether you like it or not, if you're not disruptive, then it's like, well, que sera, sera, whatever will be. So I created a terminology called VDD, value driven disruption. So how can I now raise my value? How can I add more value in my workplace, in my organization, and in my society? So in this era of creative distinction, it's now human, natural intelligence versus AI, artificial intelligence. The key is who can create disruptive value at speed. That's what it comes down to, ladies and gentlemen. Who can actually create disruptive value at speed? Is it going to be you? Is it going to be your competitor or the person that you work in your organization, your department, or is it going to be AI? That's what it simply comes down to. So, as Doris Davis says, que sera, sera will be, whatever will be. No, it's no time to be lazy, lethargic, and lackluster, but rather it's time to be deliberate, it's time to be distinctive, and it's time to be disruptive. And on that note, as I mentioned, an employee is the leader of excellence, trailblazer, and pioneer who constantly brings change to their organization. And the essence of leadership isn't about me, myself, and I, but rather is about him, her, and us. A trailblazer and pioneer understands the three C's of disruptive leadership. It's been a critical thinker, it's been a creative thinker, and it's been a critical collaborative thinker and also brings change to their organization. So whatever you do day by day, you're now legacy minded. So whenever, if
Mm.
ever you leave your organization or your department, you've left such a positive mark that people are still referencing you and talking about you even after you've left or you've gone to another organization or even an industry. So an employee is a leader of excellence, trailblazer, and pioneer who constantly brings change to their organizations. And as I mentioned before, I would love to connect with you. For this conference only, I'm offering special coaching sessions. So please do connect with me if you're interested in special discounted coaching sessions where you get also a free copy of my second book titled The Doorway to Distinction. So feel free send me an email, connect with me, and I look forward to receiving some questions. Thank you, and thank you.